Afternoon. Coming off really a very good win against a team that is very stingy defensively and has been for quite some time in Boston College. I'm really proud of the way our guys, overcame some adversity. If you take it from really just before the half where we turned the football over, defense comes up with a stop right before the half. We turn the ball over again in the third quarter, hold them to a field goal, then come up with a big fourth down stop, and then offensively we find ourselves with 3 consecutive, touchdowns. That kind of performance is what is expected and needed when you play any Power 5 team. You have to just keep playing, and I think that that's what we've been trying to develop with our football team since January. So when you're comparing and contrasting and what you're trying to build, within your football team, it's that ability to keep playing, overcome adversity, and find a way to win a football game on the road. And they're hard to come by. So I point to that, to our football team in particular, about showing some grit in that game. And then, winning by 29 points against the Power 5 team on the road shows them that, they're capable of winning football games, even if it wasn't perfect for a period of time. So we take that, we move forward, and go back on the road against a very physical opponent in Michigan State, a team that we're well aware of and what they're capable of. Have a lot of respect for Mark D'Antonio and what he's accomplished at Michigan State, a team just a few years ago, like us, was, vying for, and in our instance, a playoff spot, and for them being part of the playoffs. So a lot of pride, a lot of tradition. They're very stingy defensively. You can see they're very disciplined. Been impressed with some of their younger players. Their middle linebacker, 35. Bulla has been the name that you hear every year. You've got a new name, and Bosch at Mike. He's very athletic, physical player. Fry's been around for a while as a senior, but a really good inside backer. They've got 2 of the finer inside linebackers that we'll face, they do what they do. They're stingy against the run. Very physical in the back end, play tight man coverage, mix it up very good with their pressure package. And again, led by Coach D'Antonio's philosophy, they've always been really good defensively. Offensively, on the offensive line, an athletic offensive line, it's really a makeup, a makeover of a team that had a lot of veterans, but this is a much more athletic offensive line than Michigan State has presented to us in the past. Really impressed with some of the younger players. I think you look at the right tackle is a young player, but very athletic, and Campbell. I think the best player is clearly Allen, the center, experienced, very good football player, but it's a nice-looking offensive line, athletic, physical, strong. It's what you would expect, but even more from my eye, much more athletic. Certainly, everybody knows about the backs. Scott, Holmes, they ran all over us last year, and certainly we'll have to play a lot better to contain those 2 backs. And I've been very impressed with Lewerke. Very poised, can run. If you fall asleep in zone option, he's going to pull it and is capable of running out. He had a nice long run against Western Michigan. And he's more than just a manager of the offense. He can throw it, highly accurate, and I think has more than just escapability. He's fast. He can run. So, good football team. It'll be an electric atmosphere. It'll be loud. I think playing at BC was a tune-up, if you will, for us to enter into a louder and more boisterous atmosphere, if you will. So I think, with our guys being on the road for the first time last week, a lot of guys for the first time, I think it was a great kind of entry into going into a, even more hostile environment, if you will, playing at Michigan State. So what's that mean for us? Do what we do. Get back to work today. Really begin Tuesday with picking up our intensity. And, we can't afford to have some of the lapses that we had in terms of intensity, in terms of that, mental intensity that's required. I like our physicality. We just need to keep it tuned up and dialed up, for 4 quarters. If we do that, that's the most important thing in our preparation right now. So, fire away for you guys in terms of questions.
Brian, I noticed in the Boston College game, and it seemed like in Georgia as well, Myron Tagovailoa-Amosa was in there on the 4th down stop that was so big, getting some good penetration. In Georgia, Heinisch was, I believe, on the field when you had to turn the ball over or get Georgia to give you back the ball with a couple minutes left. What did those freshmen do to earn your trust to put them in those kind of situations this early?
I think from the very beginning, you probably used the word, is that we trust that they're going to execute the techniques that we've asked them to. They're not jumping out of their fits. There might be times where physically or technically there might be some mistakes, but they're extremely coachable. They're smart. They are always trying to do the right things. And I think if you ask Coach Elston more than anything else, are trustworthy. And if we ask them to do something, they're going to do it. And they've got traits. They've got some physical traits that allow them to be effective at the position as well.
Do you anticipate Cam Smith to be back with you this week? And if so, how does he fit into what you're trying to do with the receivers and get Claypool on the field and all that? Yeah,
I think he'll be back in the rotation. The one thing about Cam is extremely physical, great blocker. He can catch the football. We've got to catch it better, at all positions, so not just, one position. But he's definitely a guy that adds to our receiving depth. And I think he's a guy that will be at 100% this week.
With Michael Young, is he a guy eventually, maybe not this year, but eventually you feel like is a take the top off of the defense kind of guy, or am I overestimating his speed? What's your
I think he's got that kind of speed. I think he presents himself in a manner that, he could be a guy that does a little bit more than just a guy that is downfield. We think he can be a screen guy, maybe a jet sweep guy, screens. He's got a little bit of all of those tools. So I think it's too early really to tell, other than the fact that we really like his work ethic, his attitude, his football intelligence is really high. So it's put him in a good position early in his career. But I see him as more of a multi-dimensional player than maybe a perimeter player.
When the ACC commitment came on, I think with Michigan State there was still a good vibe between the ADs that they'd be able to put together some series here and there like this one. But I haven't seen any on future schedules. I'm curious what you like about this series. What would you miss about it if it went away?
It's the battle for the megaphone. You guys know that, right? We want the megaphone. I mean, it's all about the megaphone. I think, clearly, Michigan and Michigan State in terms of proximity, Midwest, we recruit a lot of the same players. There's been such great history and tradition going back to the '66 game. I just think that history, tradition, proximity, All those things make for rivalry games, but more importantly, games that attract the attention within the Midwest. And I think as games start to kind of lose that kind of local flavor in terms of teams playing each other, this is one that I still think captures a lot of people's interest. So I'm all for those kind of traditional matchups. The megaphone. Thank you very much. We need it back.
Brian, when you talked about the physicality in Michigan State, when you're deciding what aspects of your running game you want to lean on, whether it's read option, giving your offensive line a little bit more time to move and pull and push, or something more quick hitting and straight ahead, what are some of the variables that you're considering as you approach how you want to approach your running game?
Yeah, well, we try to look at inside, outside zone, pins and pulls, misdirection, and then attacking the perimeter. So on our board, if you were to go into our offensive staff room, we have a heading for each one of those elements of our offensive running game. And so each piece of those is addressed, when we're putting together our running game from week to week. And there may be some weeks where we feel like trap, which is a quick hitting play, may be more effective versus 2 wide 3 techniques that are getting upfield. If you feel like you have 2 guys that are more, locked down inside guys that are not penetrators or deep backers that play a lot of man, maybe you're not into trap. If you have edge players that are really on the ball, you don't like to get the ball outside as much. You'd rather try to run zone and read. So it really just depends on the defense from week to week. And I think what we try to do is attack the defense in all those areas on a wide front. And have all of those available to us each and every week out of our running game library. And
I mean, of course, the skill set of your offensive linemen, you've got guards that move pretty well.
Yeah.
I mean, that obviously has to come into play in your determination.
There's no question, and I think what's important to realize is that as we're in Game 3, I think we're starting to get a better sense and feel for what we're going to be really good at. And so we have this library, but, we're also, as a staff, starting to now find out these are the plays that are really going to be our core plays and get good at it. I think one element of our offense that will continue to be part of it is that you have to add the misdirection plays within your offense, whether that's out of a jet series, whether that's out of counter series. That has to be part of it. You can't just be in, pin and pull and zone read. So there has to be more to it, some misdirection, if you will. So I think that continues to evolve each and every week.
And you kind of hinted after the game that you feel like you have a better idea now which direction you want to go.
Yeah, I think after 3 weeks, we've got a better sense of where we need to. Look, I would say this. We can't appease people in terms of what looks good as much as what we're going to be good at. And if running the football is what is going to be the common denominator for wins, then that's what we're doing. And efficiency is the most important thing. And clearly, we have to work on our weaknesses, right? So wherever we feel like our weaknesses and within the offense, we have to get better at those weaknesses each and every week. But we're going to do what we're good at, and that's what you'll see what this offense does moving forward.
And obviously, Brandon Woodbush gives you a different dimension with his feet, as he proved again on Saturday. Where do you draw the line between taking full advantage of that and increasing the number of hits he's going to take over the course of a season?
I think if teams are feeling as though playing man-to-man and turning their back on the quarterback is the way they want to defend us, he's going to run a lot. I know I wouldn't want to be in man-to-man versus option offenses. It's the last thing that you want to do is turn your back on an option quarterback and give him all the field to run. Teams are starting to figure out how to defend us, too. So we're going to have to obviously adapt as we move forward. Teams that want to play a lot of man-to-man coverage are going to have to deal with Brandon Wimbush running the ball, and that's a fact. So having said that, if we see more zone coverages, he's going to have to be able to throw the football, too. So we've got to continue to grow as an offense in both those phases.
Thanks.
Yep.
Hey, Brian. Just curious, how do you get, or the conversations about getting your tight ends more involved in the passing game?
Well, we target them quite a bit, so I'm not too concerned when the play caller is also coaching the tight ends. It's never a sense that he doesn't want to get him the football. You know, if you really look at it and break it down, you know, Alizé had a number of touches. Durham Smythe catches probably the biggest pass in the game, you know, that Brandon threw down the field. So I'm pretty happy with the involvement of our tight ends. Yeah, I think that continues to evolve in terms of Brandon feeling comfortable where they are at all times and getting them the football. And I think that is something that you're going to continue to see week in and week out, that the ball is going to be targeted to the tight ends. And they're going to be an integral part of what we do.
How have you seen the younger tight ends progress? I mean, obviously we saw, or at least heard you say in the fall or training camp that Cole and Brock were doing really well, but I don't think we've really seen them yet. Obviously, it's just week 4.
Yeah, again, I think we go back to a question of how do we get 5 tight ends involved in our offense effectively? And you know, again, I think Cole's developing, and Brock is a physical player that we've tried to find a role as a blocking back. It doesn't mean that we don't think he can play. It's just that, you know, Nick Wisher is a heck of a ball catcher. Durham Smythe is a stalwart for us in terms of what he can do in Alizé. Makes it hard to get all of them, you know, the kind of time that we want them, but they're all valuable, and if need be, they're ready to play because they get the proper preparation during the week.
Brian, up the middle. Tim asked about Brandon balancing the run and taking hits. What about Josh Adams? Is that one of the reasons you took him out in the fourth quarter to give him a break? And
yeah,
how do you balance that during the game a little bit more throughout the season to make sure he's healthy?
We try to do that during the week, you know, making sure that we monitored him during the week in terms of his player load. We're very cognizant of how we practice him, making sure that he gets the proper work, that he's sharp when we get to Saturday, and then we let our best players play. And so it's really incumbent upon us to do a great job of preparing him, but understanding that he's got to feel really good when we get to Saturdays. And then Saturdays, let your best players play.
You're 3-2 versus Michigan State. There's been some crazy games. Your first one in particular in 2010. What's your memories of how wild that was going up there, and obviously how crazy that finish was?
Well, I think what I remember my 2 times up there is just that it's loud and it's a raucous atmosphere, and you know they've had a week to prepare for us, and you know they're gonna come out, you know, with a lot of energy. They've probably got the first 10 plays scripted since May. They're going to look like really good plays. We've got to sustain, you know, things for the first, you know, few minutes and just hang in there. And when the game settles in, if you're doing really well, it starts to quiet down in that stadium. If you're not, it's really loud.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Brian, got you over here. I want to take you back to something you brought up in your phone call on Sunday, and I'm paraphrasing, but I think you said that Brandon, when he was struggling in the passing game, was a little slow to see the field open up. Is that what you were getting at?
Well, it was more about rushing his throws, which if you look at it in the reverse, he didn't anticipate him. So not anticipating, you could, obviously the same kind of way to get to that same kind of answer would be he was slow in seeing him. So he just has to anticipating him a little bit better, and that's building a relationship with your receivers, trusting it, and he's just got to trust it a little bit better.
So my question is, I guess, how do you prepare him for that? Is it more film work? Is it showing him more work against maybe your top defense? Is it just something that takes time and you have to let it happen?
No, that's a fair question. I think, there's a lot of ways to kind of go about doing that. One would say, maybe you go against your defense and give him more speed, so he can react in a more intense manner, so he can duplicate that better than maybe in a practice. Another way would be, can you do more film study so it becomes, more from a picking it up, from your brain and seeing it and just that rep. I think you have to be a little bit more demanding in that when we do it, we're going to do it right in practice and we're going to get it right. And we're going to do it till we get it right. And then move on to the next play. And let's not just throw it, not get it right, and move to the next play. And so maybe that means that we just make sure that that we're really good at what we do in the passing game, and then expand from there.
You've had a unique look at some of Mark D'Antonio's other teams, and having followed him throughout the course of your career, does that give you an idea? And if so, could you speak to the kind of characteristics that are kind of benchmarked to his programs that you've noticed in interacting with them?
This team looks a lot more similar to some of his earlier teams. Extremely disciplined, hard-nosed, play to the echo of the whistle. Just resembles a lot more of the teams that I had seen 10, 11, 12, 13. Those were supremely talented teams the last few years. This team reminds me of some of his earlier teams.
Since you know how those teams play, how do you beat those teams?
Score more points. No, I mean, certainly what we did in those games, look, one of them went to overtime. The other one, was a defensive battle. You're fighting for every inch when you're playing Michigan State, because they're gonna take care of the football on offense. They're gonna play really good defense, and that will have to be the case on Saturday. We can't turn the football over like we did against BC. We're gonna have to play really good run defense, which we didn't last year, and we're gonna have to put some points on the board.
Brian, they are #1 in the nation in stopping opponents on third down. What makes them so effective in that?
I mean, look, they played 2 games. I think Western Michigan is a really good opponent. It's harder to judge Bowling Green, but I think they were challenged a little bit better against Western Michigan. I thought they did a really good job on third down. They've got a nice third down package that's, difficult sometimes to know where pressures are coming from. They've got some guys that come in third down that can, bring some pressures. And they really did a nice job against Western on first and second down and put them in some third and long situations. I think stats right now, as it relates to Michigan State, are a little early. It's a stout defense. It's a good defense. I think, if you ask them at 11%, they're not into the Big Ten Conference yet. But it's a really good defense.
And then with Josh, he was not somebody who was necessarily highly recruited coming out of high school. He was considered a 3-star, and I realize his injuries played a role in that. But what did you see from him in high school, and did you see the explosiveness that he's shown throughout his Notre Dame career?
I think Sampson and Priester had him at a 5-star. Didn't you guys have him at 5-star? I mean, Not quite. There's a little bit more to it. I mean, he was injured. I don't think he was evaluated in the manner. So those guys sometimes, fall through the cracks. We saw a guy that had a great size potential. We loved his character, and we saw a guy that had a chance to be an all-purpose guy that could catch the football coming out of the backfield, block, and run the football. And so I think, again, from a star perspective, we didn't get too caught up in that as much as what we saw and what his potential could be.
Have you ever had any other player break George Gibbs' records?
No, and I've, Mike Birch obviously does an incredible job of keeping me up to date on all George Gibbs records, which he didn't, by the way, so I'm winging it here. But our kids, when you talk about some of the records, we brought up a couple of them in terms of rushing. They like to hear it, but they move through it real quickly.
Coach, right here. When he was a senior in high school, Brandon Wimbush was actually challenging the national record for accuracy, completion percentage, finished about 73% or so. And right now there are questions about, does he have an accuracy issue or all that? Do you think that's overblown, or have you seen things in practice that make you continue to be confident that he is as accurate, and being mindful that high school is a heck of a lot different from college?
Yeah, I mean, I have absolutely no questions about his ability to play at the highest level at Notre Dame and help us win a championship. Accuracy, I think is a product of being comfortable within an offense, and an offense that has changed a little bit from what he was used to running. It also has to do with really only having one receiver that has established himself in the program for a period of time. He's working with some new receivers. So I think just some patience, and you'll see him throw the ball with a higher accuracy rate.
Have you seen it like consistently since the spring? Was there anything that had to be worked on with the motion or technique, or was it just a change in the offense overall?
If you look at all of his balls on Saturday, they were overthrows. And typically what happens when somebody overthrows, maybe it's not the greatest analogy, but if you're overthrowing in baseball, we can ask Tim Priester this because I know he's a baseball expert. Generally it's just you're rushing. And he needs to just settle down a little bit. It has nothing to do with mechanics as much as he just needs to settle. When he was settled and had his feet set, he threw a beautiful ball to Durham Smythe. So it's just a matter of settling in. I think the question that probably hit it the most was, recognition, being comfortable with the route, where the receiver is, and just trusting it. Once he gets to that level and trusts it, he trusts that corner route, that 6 route. He loves to throw that route. And you could see that he loved throwing it. And once he gets to that level with all of his passing game, he'll throw it with the same kind of accuracy.
You don't have him like in the days of Tony Rice, he was throwing darts to improve his touch or anything. You don't have anything like that?
No, we haven't gotten to Tin Cup where he's wearing some kind of device and, trying to. No, we're pretty good there.